Deion Sanders was reportedly interested in the Las Vegas Raiders. What did they have to say? And is he now a candidate for another NFL job? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I'm your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We're also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. So make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so that way you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage. Let's dive right into the latest on Deion Sanders to the Las Vegas Raiders. For those of you that missed it, and I think a lot of people got upset about this report, but it was a report. It wasn't just people like being like, hey, I think he's interested. There was a report confirmed by the Las Vegas Review-Journal that Deion Sanders' people reached out to the Raiders and said, hey, I'm interested, which came a few days after he went on Good Morning America and said, hey, I would coach in the NFL if I could coach my sons, Shilo and Shedeur. And so it was kind of like is Deion Sanders looking for a way out? Are the Las Vegas Raiders a likely landing spot for him? Well, we got an answer about that from two reporters from The Athletic who are covering the situation very closely, and this is what they had to say. There's been some buzz about the University of Colorado head coach Deion Sanders, but the Raiders have, quote, zero interest in hiring him, according to a leaked source. Agents using the stubbornly quiet Raiders for leverage goes back as far as the franchise is losing. So what does this mean? Well, as I talked about over the weekend, actually, it was over the weekend, I had an episode where I talked about all the madness happening. Coach Prime is currently not one of the highest paid coaches in college football, despite all of the value that he brings to Colorado, right? They have a tough decision to make. They have to figure out a way to pay him enough for him to feel like he's being owed the proper money, but you also want to pay him like based on what he's done, and what he's done on the field is a 9-4 record and then last year was 4-8. So he's 13-12 overall. And so you want to pay him appropriately for what he's done. You want to pay him appropriately for what he does to the program. Obviously brings in a ton of popularity. I think if Coach Prime were to leave Colorado, all of the top talent that he brought in would leave with him or would just leave the program in general. So you have to figure out a middle ground, because I don't know if Colorado is going to pay him the most in the country. When I did this episode over the weekend, a lot of people were saying he needs to be paid 10 plus, 13 plus. This is just a rundown of the top 5 highest paid coaches in college football. Kirby Smart currently and Dabo Swinney are 1 and 2. They're the only coaches in college football who have won a title as a head coach right now. Kirby Smart's paid $13.2 million. Dabo Swinney's $11.1 million. Texas coach Steve Sarkisian is third at 10.6. Then you have Lincoln Riley at 4, USC head coach at 10. Ryan Day is also at 10 million. And then Mike Norvell is at 10 flat. Then you have Kalen DeBoer at 10 flat, Brian Kelly at 9.9, Mark Stoops at 9, Lane Kiffin at 9. So I feel like he could probably be a top 15 paid coach because realistically, you have to do what you have to do to keep him happy, right? If Deion Sanders is the best way for you to get top talent, be one of the most popular brands in college football, and generate tons of buzz and boost the local economy, you got to figure out a way to keep that. You can't lose that. So the Raiders not being interested, I think Deion Sanders coming out, or at least not coming out, but Deion Sanders reaching out to the Raiders, I think that was a little bit of a contract push, right? We know that Joel Klatt reported that Deion Sanders has a contract offer on the table from Colorado. He has yet to sign it, but he has not signed it yet. So clearly there's something that he wants different on that contract, whether it's more money, whether it's a contract like stipulation where it's like, hey, I want this on Tuesdays, or I want my sons to have an office here, whatever it is, right? We don't know what it is. That's just me making up hypotheticals. But we know that he probably wants another contract offer. He wants him to sweeten the pot. So what other NFL job just opened up that is interesting that I think people are going to try to latch Deion Sanders onto is the Dallas Cowboys job. The Dallas Cowboys job, obviously Coach Prime played for the Dallas Cowboys. He had a ton of success with them. He is probably one of the biggest stars in Dallas Cowboys franchise history. And he obviously didn't play his entire career there, but still, I think a lot of people a lot of people sort of see the draw there. Deion Sanders, this is sort of the case. He understands that Dallas gets attention. He turned Jackson State into an FCS power, has turned Colorado around. The thing that the Dallas Cowboys, and this is sort of where it comes into play, the Dallas Cowboys kind of messed up by not interviewing other coaches or not sort of making their decision on Mike McCarthy sooner, because Mike McCarthy, they just let him walk today. But now they sort of have to wait for these teams to finish their playoff runs, right? You can't be interviewing Ben Johnson mid-playoff run, right? You can't be interviewing Aaron Glenn mid-playoff run. And jobs are going to close. And so you sort of have to hope that, if you're the Dallas Cowboys, that is, that you can lure a candidate over to Dallas with the star, with the brand, with the notoriety. Is that candidate going to be Deion Sanders? We don't know, because Deion Sanders has said up until this past week he's had no interest in coaching the NFL. Again, and I say this because I think a lot of people are trying to twist the words. Deion Sanders saying he would coach in the NFL to coach his sons is him saying he'd coach in the NFL. It's a possibility, right? Doesn't matter if it's now or in the future. It is a possibility now. He said it, he put that out there. If he doesn't want people running with that, then obviously he could come out and say, hey, I don't want to coach in the NFL. Like, I was just using that as leverage. Obviously, he's not going to say that. So Coach Prime is willing to work in the NFL. The one thing that I've always said that I see as a challenge for him in the NFL is, one, he wants to coach his kids, which could get a bit complicated because I don't think we see nepotism in the NFL. Obviously, Shedeur and Shilo are both really good players, so it wouldn't be nepotism. But like, this isn't a Bronny James. I think realistically, Shedeur Sanders will be a franchise quarterback, and I think Shilo Sanders could be a special teams guy, right? Who could probably work his way into the rotation at some point in his career. So there's a path for both of them to obviously be on an NFL roster. That being said, what happens if he's the head coach and Shedeur Sanders is struggling and the fan base is wanting to go away from Shedeur and to draft another quarterback? What happens if the owner wants you to bring in a veteran quarterback and that veteran quarterback beats out Shedeur in training camp? This is just hypotheticals. Or what happens if Shilo, for instance, isn't holding his own, right? What if Shiloh's struggling on defense and special teams wise, they have other guys who are just better suited to play special teams, and Coach Prime gets a little frustrated that people are like, okay, it's time for him to go, right? The general manager decides it's time for him to go. Is he going to want to coach there? Is he going to hold the team hostage, or is he going to be like, yeah, it's a business, son. You can't, we're cutting you. Like, I feel like that's a weird situation to be in. Another thing, Deion Sanders has full power, full control over everything in Colorado. And I don't know if he'd have that in Dallas, of all places, right? Which I think the one thing that people complain about Dallas is it's kind of like a zoo. It's like a spectacle. I think it was Dalton Schultz that said that there was tours to the training room while they're working out, and like they could like feels like they're zoo animals because people are like looking through glass, tapping on the glass and stuff. And then also, this is another thing. Deion Sanders won't be the biggest star in Dallas, obviously. I think that's Jerry Jones's world, right? You're not going to outshine Jerry. Like, that's just not how it goes. And so is he okay with being sort of the second fiddle to Jerry Jones? I don't know. And is he going to love how involved Jerry Jones is, right? I think that's kind of been a lot of the criticism about Jerry, is like, he not only like runs the show, but will go on a radio show and talk about you, but he also decides a lot of things, him and his son, Stephen Jones. So I don't think Deion Sanders to the NFL is happening. I think more so this whole contract negotiation thing was just him figuring out a way to position himself to maybe get more money, to maybe get better incentives, whatever it is, to maybe get a bigger coaches pool, like whatever it is. I don't think Coach Prime is going to the NFL. I also don't think this will be the last time we hear his name linked to the NFL, because obviously he's one of the biggest names in football right now. So you sort of have to deal with that. Otherwise, I mean, it's just life, right? You have to deal with the fact that, hey, Coach Prime is a hot commodity. People want to link him to their team. People want to write about it being linked to their team because it gets some views. People want to talk about it on their YouTube shows because it will get them views. That's just how the Deion Sanders experience works. But I don't think he's going to go to the NFL. You guys comment below. I'll give you three choices. A, is this Deion Sanders using the NFL as a negotiation tactic? B, is there a slight interest in going to the NFL to make sure both of his sons get in the NFL? Or C, is he genuinely interested in going to the NFL? You guys comment, or D, other, and then tell me why. Comment what you think, and let's talk about it in the comment section. When we come back, Deion Sanders revealed he's no longer a father at Colorado. He's a coach. That's something he's been looking forward to. Let's talk about it. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back. Now, Taxes is easily uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation. An expert who's backed by the latest technology with cross-checks, millions of data points for 100% accuracy. While they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get the most money back guaranteed, all while going about your day. No stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.